You know, some battles are fought with tanks and artillery. Others are fought with headlines and TV reports. But the battle for Kupyansk? Well, it was both. This wasn't just a fight for some city. No, this was a 4-month struggle over reality itself, where one side declared victory on paper while the other was literally fighting to hold the line on the ground.
Okay, so let's dive right in. To really get this, you first have to understand what was at stake. Kupyansk, it isn't just a dot on the map. We're talking about the second largest railway hub in the entire Kharkiv region. Think of it like a logistical artery, a critical junction that supplies the whole Eastern Front. Whoever holds Kupyansk basically holds the key to moving troops and supplies.
So to get the full picture, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at why the city is such a big deal. Then we'll get into the Kremlin's strange campaign of paper victories. After that, we'll cover the brutal reality of what was really happening on the ground. And finally, we'll see how truth, with a big assist from technology, ultimately won out. All right, so let's start with that strategic value. Everything that went down here, both the actual fighting and the fiction, it all stems from the city's geography. This is where the stakes just become crystal clear. You've got 5 separate railway lines that all converge right here in Kupyansk, connecting the whole region to Russia and the occupied Donbas. For Russia, taking the city opens a direct supply line for a push towards Kharkiv. For Ukraine, holding it creates this vital barrier, protecting their forces further to the east. Control of this one city dictates the flow of the entire war in this part of the country. So, with the stakes this high, the Kremlin launched a really aggressive information campaign. See, they didn't just want to capture Kupyansk, they wanted the world, and especially their own people, to believe they already had. They were literally creating a parallel reality built completely on claims. Just take a look at this timeline. It starts in November 2025 with Russia's top general, Valery Gerasimov, publicly telling President Putin that Kupyansk is fully liberated. A month later, Putin himself claims 15 Ukrainian battalions are trapped. And then again, in late January 2026, Gerasimov reports another capture. You see, these weren't some low-level rumors. These were official declarations coming from the very top. And this right here just perfectly illustrates their strategy. This quote was broadcast all over Russian state media. It was presented as an undeniable fact. The only problem? On the ground, Ukrainian soldiers were still holding the city, and a very, very different battle was raging. So let's pivot from the Kremlin's made-up narrative to the stark reality on the ground. Because while victory was being declared on television, Ukraine was in the middle of a really complex 4-month-long operation to defend and ultimately secure Kupyansk. And this wasn't just a single chaotic event. It was a methodical, multi-phase operation. It started with what they called active defense, detecting and stopping Russian groups from sneaking in through forests and even underground tunnels. From there, it moved to isolating and eliminating those pockets of fighters, and it all culminated in a final, decisive assault to clear the city's administrative heart in January 2026. And here is the moment that shattered the narrative. On January 12th, while Russia was still claiming it was in control, fighters from the Kremlin Brigade raised the Ukrainian flag over the city council building. This wasn't a statement. It was undeniable visual proof, a fact on the ground that no amount of fiction could just wish away. So how did they do it? Not with the meat assaults in human waves that Russia was reportedly using, but with smart, modern urban warfare tactics. They were using FPV drones connected by fiber-optic cables to bypass electronic jamming and fly inside buildings. They used rooftops to surround Russian positions from above in what they called a vertical envelopment. And they even turned the underground tunnels Russia was using for infiltration into traps by remotely mining them. Pretty incredible. Which brings us to our final section, how the truth finally cut through all that noise. You see, this victory wasn't just won with clever tactics on the ground. It was cemented by a systematic effort to debunk the Kremlin's entire story using technology and open-source intelligence. And here you can just see the two realities collide. On one side, you've got the Kremlin's narrative, full liberation, battalions encircled, total control. On the other side, the ground truth, a continuous Ukrainian defense, successful troop rotations happening right under the nose of this supposed encirclement, and finally, that Ukrainian flag flying over City Hall. I mean, the gap between the two couldn't be wider. So how was the truth actually verified? Well, there were 3 key tools. First, Ukraine published its own drone footage showing their troops in the very locations Russia claimed to hold. Second, open-source intelligence analysts used geolocation to prove that Putin's claim of encircling 15 battalions was physically impossible on that terrain. And third, official bodies like Ukraine's Center for Countering Disinformation just directly called out the Kremlin's parallel reality. This was so much more than just a single battle lost. It was really a threefold defeat for Russia. A strategic military failure to take a key objective, a catastrophic reputational defeat on the world stage, and a complete exposure of their propaganda machine, caught creating victories out of thin air. Ultimately, Kupyansk became a graveyard for Russia's military reputation. The repeated, high-level claims of victory so easily and so visually disproven completely discredited the Kremlin's top leadership. It showed a strategy that relied on hiding huge losses behind a facade of these paper victories.
And that leaves us with a critical question for our time. The battle for Kupyansk shows us that conflicts are now fought in the information space just as fiercely as they are on the ground. So, as we all consume news from around the world, the real challenge is this: how do we tell the difference between a headline and a frontline?